joining us, who is a farmer from Ayrshire who has an involvement with Moredun, a long-standing involvement with Moredun. Is that right, Mungo?
Yeah, my involvement goes back to about 2011 or 2012 when I was invited on to the South of Scotland board for the Moredun Foundation.
What do you think it must have been like back then, 100 years ago for the farmers who founded Moredun, but even not so much them, but their counterparts in Ayrshire and all over who had these issues and just, as I said, they didn't really know what they were dealing with. What would you have thought of it in those days?
Well, I think that's an interesting question, because as being a young 59-year-old farmer, I'm about the average age of the farmers round about. We're a generation and a half back the way. And I think our generation actually takes it for granted that these clostridial diseases are all controlled now, and the Heptavax and the Covaxins are all there. They don't really know and understand what they're there for. The only way that we understand them is if we miss a year by vaccinating sheep, you come to lambing time and then you have an upside down lambing. That is the hardest thing that we can suffer from. So going back to what these guys 100 years ago experienced, the hogs and the ewe lambs were dying. What was the problem? And that's exactly what the Moredun was set up for.
Yes, we were indeed. And lots of different combinations, because different countries and continents have different combinations of clostridial disease. I think it's now up to a 10-in-1 vaccine in some countries for those types of infections. But it started at Moredun, and that's pretty impressive.
Monty, I would say that's the part that our generation takes for granted. They don't know the background to these vaccines and where they were produced, and they were produced locally. Yeah, as I say, we take it for granted that we use a vaccine. It solves all the problems clostridally within cattle and sheep. It costs pennies to actually vaccinate these animals to protect them. It's a great story, and it happened in Scotland. And not enough people know about that. As Julie says, it's worldwide now. We actually have a vaccine in Australia which is working wonders down there for the homunculus one.
That's the barber's pole worm, is that right? Barber's pole?
Yes,
yeah.
It is.
Yeah. I think the only one we're looking for a cure for now is what my father-in-law would refer to as want of breath.
Quite a few conditions cause that when that's the problem.
Thanks to Julie Fitzpatrick and to Mungo Guthrie. Any organisation reaching its centenary will rightly spend time reflecting on and celebrating its achievements. But what of the Moredun's future? We'll hear from the next generation of researchers shortly. Firstly, Julie and Mungo talked about a mobile science lab. Back in the day, it was effectively a shepherd's hut on wheels. It went from farm to farm doing livestock research then and there. We've put up a picture on Twitter, so you'll find it at on_farm UK, so you can see what we're talking about and what it looked like.
Literally, the scientists went out in this mobile laboratory, went onto farms and would look down the microscope to see if they could see what the causes of disease were. And they did. I mean, that's the amazing thing. They didn't have the technologies that we have at the moment, but gradually, one by one, they have really managed to get most of the problems solved. The ones that we're left now, I have to say, are the more difficult ones.
Yeah.
The diseases that we now have, and some of the sheep farmers yourself will probably know, some of them are really difficult because they're not easy to isolate the cause of the disease, or it's difficult to identify methods of actually preventing the disease. So we're left with the tough ones to deal with.
Well, I'm pleased to tell you that for 2020 and beyond, there's a new mobile laboratory. It's set to go farm to farm and to rural shows up and down the country. And again, as you'll see on Twitter, this one is a lot more up to date.
So here we are just at the bus, and I'm just trying to open the door now that the guys have given us keys. They're a little stiff because it's new. Anyway, here we go. This is the back just opening up now. And you can see it's a bit like a TARDIS. It's very spacious in the inside.
Lee Ennis is Moredun's Head of Communications, and she showed us round the bus.
So here we are in 2020, and we're just walking onto the new Moredun Mobile Lab and Outreach bus, which we've just got into the Institute now, and it's absolutely fantastic. Inside, it's very modern. We've got microscopes, laptop computers that are attached to a smart TV, so we can demonstrate diagnostics very visually. If farmers are coming on the bus, they can see how we would diagnose disease on their farm. And we've also got facilities here to be able to show people, to demonstrate some of these very, very new diagnostics that can give you answers in about 5 minutes. I think it's really interesting for the farmers also to be able to visualise what we're talking about when we say, for example, we're doing a worm egg count. They can actually look at the sample down the microscope and see what we're talking about. And having it hooked up to the smart TV means you've got a very big visual display of what we're doing. So we're hoping that this work will allow people to actually get some hands-on on what we're doing diagnostically. We've got the capacity to do modern diagnostics in the field, and we've also got the chance to do a lot of outreach work, so go back onto the farm and do some of that diagnostic work that we did in the past.
Thanks to Lee Ennis. Professor Lee Ennis, I should say. That was just a quick sneak peek, but I'm sure we'll see more of the Moredun Mobile Lab on the road soon. Next up on OnFARM, I've had my own close-up experience with Moredun's researchers, and I've benefited from their work here on my farm, as I mentioned in my chat with Julie and Mungo. One of your PhD students at the time, called Lindsay Melville, came out to visit me, and she was doing some work on wormer resistance. We took a tour around the sheep and took some poo samples, which she was going to take away and analyse for wormer resistance. It was brilliant from my point of view because, to be truthful, and I maybe sound like a bit of a dinosaur here, but to be truthful, it was the first time I had ever really even got involved in sampling, taking the poo samples, and just having someone come out and show me how to do it, and then, talk me through the science of it, and not just be looking at it from the, have you or haven't you got worms that you need to deal with, but actually from the resistance side of things was brilliant.
She's a great example of, one of our younger postdoctoral research scientists, and we're really fortunate. We've got a good number of them, and these are going to be the principal scientists, the investigators of the future. Lindsay can go out to a market and she can speak to farmers and pick up poo samples and sort them out, but she can also come back to the lab and do molecular technology to actually understand the resistance, and then go back to the farmers and say, this is what you have to do. I think it's a great example of science in practice, the appliance of science, as we like to call it.
Yeah. Farmers are frightened from scientists, and scientists probably don't know how to interact with most farmers at that point. So it's great to have somebody like that can go out and do both sides of it and take the message back to them. The farmer actually needs that wee wakening up at that point, just to let them know that the scientist is really talking sense to them, and they're actually going to be saving money within their own business, whether it's a dose or whether it's for toxoplasmosis, or, we really need to look at that, cut our costs within the industry, and look after the sheep that have the real problem, whether it's worms or fluke, etc.
I'll just say for the listeners, my sheep had a clean bill of health, no wormer resistance, so we're all good.
It's always your neighbour that has the problem with sheep farming, isn't it?
Just to clarify, that's definitely not true of my neighbours. I couldn't possibly say that, not on a podcast anyway. I'm pleased to say that researcher Lindsay, who helped me out on my farm, is with us next, along with another next generation Moredun scientist, David.
Hi, I'm Lindsay Melville. I'm an early career researcher at Moredun. I've been there for about 9 years now. I did my PhD there, and I've worked on several projects relating to anthelmintic resistance and grazing strategies in sheep and cattle.
Hello, I'm David Smith. I'm an early career researcher at Moredun Research Institute. I'm interested in all things parasites, what makes them tick, and how we can come up with new vaccines, drugs and disease intervention methods to stop them.
Lindsay, I don't know if you even remember, you probably meet so many farmers, but you came down to meet with me a couple of years back.
No, I do remember. It was good. We went round a number of farms within a couple of months, just talking to different farmers about how they find nematodirus, the disease, on their farm and what kind of control measures they're putting in place, and also going out into the field with the farmers and helping them collect samples, show them what we need to do our work. I do meet an awful lot of farmers through my work. It's always interesting to go around and see different farming scenarios and to be able to give people a bit of a hand with what they're doing, and informs our research quite well as well.
Do you enjoy that side of it, getting out and interacting and meeting farmers and, sort of steering them on the right path, as it were?
Yes, very much so. It's rewarding for people like me to be able to go out and see firsthand the issues that people are having on their farms, and then be able to translate that back into our research. And then once we've done some work, be able to go out and do some knowledge exchange. So yeah, it's nice for us to be able to see a kind of full circle.
Hopefully that comes out in this podcast as well, just how much of a resource people like yourselves are to farmers like me. I mean, I would hope that I'm a kind of switched on type guy, but some of these issues, and you talk about resistance and what have you, and you read about it in the farming press and things like that, but trying to fully understand it. When you came to see me, Lindsay, I was almost ashamed to sort of admit that, I don't quite get what this is all about. And I think that is a big strength to what Moredun and what David and yourself sort of do. You make it accessible. That's
nice to hear that we are hopefully making some difference when we're out and about talking to people. It's nice to hear.
I think you kind of reassured me, and since then, basically mid-May, so lambs are starting to eat grass and what have you by that stage, and every year since then I've white drenched, and it has made a massive difference. It has. I do think it is. Yeah, it's been a good strategy. So, David, what are you involved in at the moment in terms of getting out and about onto farm?
Well, over the past 12 months, because of certain societal circumstances, haven't had a great deal of opportunity to get out and interact with farmers directly, but it's certainly part of the plan going forwards. It's part of what got me to come to Moredun in the first place. So before this, I've always worked in a university setting, doing master's degree, PhD, and then postdoctoral research. I was very interested in thinking about how can I make my research make a real world difference. I don't mean to disgruntle any colleagues that I have in universities at all. They do a lot of fantastic work, but I feel like with Moredun, I have that opportunity to outreach a whole load more. Not to get too cheesy, but that's precisely why I got into a career in science to begin with. I want to be able to make an impact, whether it's local or wider. And through Moredun, I get precisely that opportunity. So not a lot of experience with OnFARM at the moment over the past 12 months, but hopefully coming to a farm near people in the near future.
By the sound of what you're saying, we're very lucky to have someone like you with, an interest in vaccines and what have you, targeting your efforts towards livestock and farmers, especially in the world that we face at the moment in terms of, human health and COVID and these challenges.
This is a huge thing now. It's called One Health, about how animal health and human health and the environment is all interconnected. And a lot of the diseases that humans get, and we are seeing this with COVID-19, it came from an animal, right? A lot of diseases, not just COVID-19. A lot of the diseases either come from livestock or are shared with livestock, so they get the same kind of infections. And so I think one great way of protecting public health is through stopping diseases in livestock to begin with. It's a much more cost-effective approach, a much more pragmatic approach, in my opinion. Prevention of disease is always better than treatment of disease. And that's why I'm a big advocate of vaccines.
Lindsay, you're a smart cookie. You obviously gone through school, thinking, what am I going to do, doing all the sciences at school. What made you, why Moredun, why livestock? What made you take this path?
So at university, I always knew that I wanted to get into research, but being that I'm not from a farming background at all, I hadn't really thought about agricultural research. But I did my honours project for fourth year at uni at Moredun. It was about genetics in squirrels. So I came to Moredun, did that project, and whilst I was there was an opportunity to take up a summer student project with the parasitology department, which I thought would be good experience. So I went and did that.